Welcome to the last May edition of the PFF forecast for 2023. It is May 29th. It is a beautiful Monday, usually Sunday evening, but because of the long weekend, we're doing Monday evening. Memorial Day, about just under 50 minutes before, or about 65 minutes, I should say, before the Game 7 tip. So we will talk a little bit about Game 7, but we're going to do got some passing yardage props, some over-unders on FanDuel. We're going to hit those, got a little Jimmy G conversation, what's going on over there, and then a little new confidence finally released. So there will be a team that picks them up that is not the Arizona Cardinals this year. So it'd be interesting to talk about with Judah and Brad. It'd be a great podcast. Let's rock. Brad, it's nice of you to wear Sunday red on Monday and to do so from a skin color perspective as well. We appreciate that.
Yeah, just full lobster. I don't know if it shows up in the arms as well, but always rocking. Look, Tiger's on the injured list. I'm stepping up in any way I can.
What happened? Was it I forgot sunscreen, or was it I wore sunscreen but it didn't matter situation?
It's a classic. I had brought it, I had it, but Martha's Vineyard was probably like 60, 65 degrees, and it had a nice breeze. You didn't feel the sun. And it's the classic, like, oh, I probably don't need to put on that much. It's not a big deal. And then you come home at the end of the day and you're just bright red. So I'm an idiot is the answer to the question.
Have either of you two ever had like such a bad sunburn that you like couldn't like sleep or function? Has that ever happened?
One time in college, yes.
Mine happened after college. I was teaching in New York. I did Teach for America after school. And I'm in New York. I come back to LA to visit, and it was like a decently nice day. It's probably 70 degrees outside. And I was like, I'm getting a tan no matter what. I go out to the beach. It's like my spring break, and it's like windy, to your point, like windy and not that warm. I'm like, oh, I'll be fine. I don't need sunscreen. I've lived in Southern California for years. I'm good. And I like fell asleep with my back like facing the sun, and I could not do anything. I was like crying in pain in the shower, and there was like nothing I could do. It was the worst. It was such horrible pain. And you know what I did to cure myself? I didn't really cure me, but aloe vera didn't work. I put like peppermint extract on my skin, and it like opens the pores and like apparently lets heat out. And so I just smelled like a huge candy cane for like 3 days on my spring break. It was awful.
You were just exuding heat out of your pores for days.
Yeah. And smelled awful. And the worst thing was that I was there like visiting, but I was also staying with my current girlfriend at her place, but we were like just newly dating, or like, I don't know if we even started dating at that point. So I was like, very, very embarrassed. Anyways, that is my sunburn story for all the good people out there. So wear sunscreen, I guess, is the message. Let's talk a little bit about the Jimmy G stuff. So Brad, there was this, remember we talked about it when he supposedly, he failed the physical. There are a lot of things that I'm not sure really add up. We remember him getting hurt in San Francisco, obviously. And then the NFC Championship game comes around, and there was some talk that if they'd made the Super Bowl, he was going to be available to play. Some players pushing for him even to be active for that game. And then now there's this like kind of whole new thing that's coming up with the Raiders. Now he might never play there. So if you could kind of, correct us on this and tell us exactly kind of what's happening and what the ramifications might be.
Yeah. So first, at the outset, when we had that show with Seth, and we were talking about how they had not had the introductory press conference yet, and it was kind of strange. His details had not come through the wire yet for his contract, and we were all kind of wondering what the situation was. We speculated maybe he'd failed his physical. I'm not sure they outright denied that, but they definitely just waited a couple days. They still did everything. It turns out he did. He failed his physical in March, so they changed the terms of his contract to where instead of there being a signing bonus, there is no signing bonus. It's all salary. The total value of the deal is still the same. And there's also an injury waiver, which is actually pretty common in NFL contracts, where it essentially says, I'm guessing, I've not read his yet. A Rapport tweeted it, so I probably should have, but I was on vacation. So anyway, essentially what he usually says is, no, I'm sure is what it says. Basically, like this injury in particular, if he re-injures his foot, then we're not on the hook for these guarantees or injury guarantees, stuff like that. It's very, very common. We'll say, we'll sign this guy, but we know he's torn his ACL. If he hurts his ankle on his other leg, we owe him injury guarantees. If he hurts this knee, we've essentially written in a carve out in this contract saying we are not on the hook for injury guarantees if it's this same injury. So probably the same situation. Here's where it gets like the whole funny back and forth for folks didn't see between Mike Florio and Jason Fitzgerald over the cap.com. This has been out for a while. Jason had a podcast talking about it in March. And now Florio, I guess, is upset because Ian Rappaport claimed it was, I don't know, his scoop. Who knows? Whatever. Anyway, it's not a huge deal. Florio tried to make it seem like they're going to cut him tomorrow and that he's done in Las Vegas. He's never going to play for them. It means none of those things. They went ahead. They signed the contract. Yes, the terms are not as they initially were planned to be, but I don't think it's this massive deal. Like I said, it's very standard. It's obviously not super standard for a franchise quarterback or whatever you want to call him. But it's not this like crazy anomaly that should lead to conspiracy theories, as it did.
I mean, I have conspiracy theories. I'm not a top 5 conspiracy theorist like Mike Florio is, per Howie Roseman. Maybe one day we'll get to that. But as Elon Musk said, some conspiracy theories turn out to be true. So I will be here to provide them for us here in a second. I just have one question though on that. You mentioned the carve out and what was written in. It's exactly, I did actually read it because I didn't do anything that special on Memorial Day weekend. And it is specific to the injury in his foot that, is keeping him on the sidelines at the moment. But one thing that I thought was interesting, so he got did he get a second surgery or did he not get the surgery until he signed? Can you explain that part?
That's what I want to talk about. So I'm very glad you get that follow-up question. Yes. So this happens very, very often to where a player will finish a season and they'll know they have an injury, but they probably think you can go in somewhere, get signed, and pass a physical, because I don't think it's the most strenuous of tests. I think, doctor looks at you, you get x-rays, all those type of things. I think you'd maybe go through a very standard, scan of your body. Obviously, sometimes it catches cancer like a Foster Moreau, but yeah, right. But I don't think they're making him like do jumping jacks in the office or anything like that. So it does create a weird dichotomy to where a player might say, yeah, surgery can get me back faster probably, but if I get the surgery now, then I'm certainly not passing a physical anytime soon. And then teams will wait on me and won't sign me until, May, June, whatever. So, no, I don't think it was a second procedure. I think he got nothing done and was basically just hoping to sign first and then get the procedure, not in a sneaky way. And I guess maybe it was even worse than expected, or I don't know what the exact specifics were, but it does always create a difficult situation for players. Do you do it right away, or do you wait and then do it after you actually get signed?
Yeah, it's interesting. What do you make of this whole thing, Judah? Is this the off season? We have nothing to talk about, so we're going to talk about this, or is this something?
Yeah, no, I think it's the off season. We have nothing really to talk about. And honestly, it's something we've brought up, I think, now on like 3 straight pods, which is like talking about the stated preference versus the revealed preference, or the stated preference, the thing you say you do versus the revealed preference, the thing you actually do. If the Raiders knew in March that Jimmy G was really hurt, wouldn't you think they'd sign a quarterback maybe, or draft a quarterback maybe? Do you think they would re-sign Josh Jacobs? Like, this is not a team that's just going to like move on Jimmy Garoppolo, like Mike Florio is suggesting on the spot. He's their quarterback right now, I think, barring something crazy that none of us know about. It seems to me like an off-season story. The Raiders are planning on having Jimmy Garoppolo as their starting quarterback.
Yeah, maybe the Raiders are, but I wonder if their new owner is. And we talked about this. Was it last week or the week before, when Brady is now a minority owner of the Raiders? He just played last season. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for him to pull a little MJ. Be an owner / player of team like MJ was with the Wizards. I think The difference is Brady probably has a little more in the tank than Jordan did at the end of his career, and the Raiders maybe I think they have to be because the Wizards were terrible, but have some players there, right? They have Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow, and a couple of pass rushers, so it's not like completely devoid of talent. So I'm looking here at the AFC Conference champion at 45-1, the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm tempted. I am definitely tempted by it because not that it's something that was planned out and this was like something that was thought through, like maybe some people are purporting it to be, but these things just provide an opportunity. So it's something that Brady may look at and provides an opportunity for him that maybe wasn't there if they were paying Garoppolo, they guaranteed him some subset of money. I would argue that it doesn't even really matter, right? If Brady wanted to come back and play, I think that would make a ton of sense. And, that he could just come back and play for the Raiders. I don't know that would push them over the top. Certainly, the Chiefs would still be favored, I think, probably pretty heavily in the AFC West, but would be a hell of a lot better than my Lord and Savior, Jimmy G. So that's my conspiracy theory. Does it have a 1 in 45 chance to happen? I don't know. You guys tell me.
I mean, look, until Brady is 60 years old, there's going to be conspiracy theories that are probably loosely warranted. So I think the other owners have to allow him to play for the Raiders, but hey, that probably just makes them more money. So why not?
Yeah, I can't imagine. Can you imagine that conversation? Calling up Mark Davis. Hey, Mark, sorry to bother you in the middle of your PF Chang's meal, but I'm thinking of coming back and playing. So how do you feel about that? I mean, they'd be ecstatic about it, obviously. The other interesting piece is whether, if they decided to move away from Jimmy. So they could basically cut him for nothing. Is that the
nothing.
deal?
Yep.
If they cut him tomorrow, how long would it take for a team to sign him?
I mean, the question is as a starter, I'm not sure there's a job available. Maybe Washington tries to convince him or something. I don't know, but I think there's teams around the NFL the Jets probably bring him as a backup. You probably could have some answers there, but I don't know about starter. Am I missing anyone, Judah? Atlanta?
No.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see anyone doing that at this stage. But also, all this information is known. The Raiders can, just to tie back to that conversation, the Raiders know exactly what they're getting into. I don't foresee them cutting him. They made this deal with the full knowledge. Nothing new has happened since March.
The San Francisco 49ers have to be sitting. I mean, I know that Shanahan talks up Sam Darnold like he's the second coming, but I would think if he was back out there, it'd be at a huge discount. And I could the Niners are the ones that make the most sense.
That's true.
They could be in a really bad spot if all these guys suck / are injured. One of the reasons that we bring up Jimmy G is that on FanDuel, you can find season-long passing yardage totals, over-unders for every quarterback except Jimmy G. He's not on there. But there are over-unders for a lot of quarterbacks. Before the podcast, we were talking about the rookies because, Brad, we discussed this a few podcasts ago when they got released on DraftKings. And what did you say? Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are we got them at under 38, and these are 33 and 32 respectively for Bryce Young and CJ Stroud.
I think we bet 38.75 was the bet we placed on the under Bryce Young, and I think Stroud was 3,700, and they're both 500 yards less on FanDuel.
It's absolutely incredible. I mean, I almost feel bad for the people that have to put these markets up and hang them up because they, it's not like there's one person that's like, hey, you get, season long passing yards. It's like, hey, you're going to do, X, Y, and Z, and you've got a bunch of stuff to do, and you've got to kind of put these markets up there. And then the only people that are really going to bet them are people like us who tear them apart. And, the average Joe is out there betting, same game parlays on overs, left, right, and center. So I do have a little bit of sympathy for them. Let's talk about a few that we like, though, because both Judah, you and Brad have already bet a couple thus far. Judah, let's start with you.
Yeah, I start with Trevor Lawrence at what was Bryce Young's passing prop at 38.75. I'm going to take the over here. Lawrence threw for 4,000 yards last year. We've spoken at length about Calvin Ridley coming back, and we think he actually might have an influence on this passing game. I even just posted a chart on Twitter. The man has absolutely destroyed zone coverage in his time. We shouldn't forget just how dominant he was. But again, it's all about like expectation here, which is like the Jaguars are going to be a pretty good team. Certainly one that's probably more competitive than they were in the first half of last year. And Lawrence still threw for 4,000 yards. I think this is going to be an elite offense. You've talked about how good he is from a clean pocket, especially over the second half of the year. He's just a really good quarterback, and I think he's materially mispriced as a guy who's kind of in like the 10 to 12 range. The second one I like, and this is something we've also spoken about, which is the Anthony Richardson prop at 2,700. I like the under here because I don't think Anthony Richardson is starting week 1. I actually think he's probably going to start week 5 or week 6. We've talked about how, Stan Scheich has brought his guy with Gardner Minshew in there. I don't think the plan is for the Colts to compete this year. I think they see it as a development year. And even if they do start him early on, I see this more as like a Justin Fields offense from early, which is a lot of running, protecting the quarterback, using a bunch of quarterback runs, and that does not see a bunch of attempts for the quarterback. Where even if Anthony Richardson kind of impresses, I think the expectations are so low that I'm still taking the under.
Yeah, I like those a lot. Brad, what about you?
Yep. So the Trevor Lawrence one I like as well, and it ties into my thought here is Jacksonville's defense didn't get better this offseason. You probably could argue with the loss of some of the guys in free agency, it may have gotten worse. Their draft is not going to materially change their defense either. Detroit's defense did get a little bit better. We've talked, of course, about some of the signings they've made in the secondary in particular, but I still think it's going to be a below average NFL defense. So you have Jared Goff at the same number as Trevor Lawrence, 38.75. And a half on the over under there. He threw for 4,400 something yards last year. Jameson Williams is now suspended for 6 games for betting, but he'll still play more games in 2023 than he did in 2022. Maybe break off some, super long gains and added those numbers. And look, I know we had them to win their division. It's bad, but I still think they're going to be playing in some high scoring games. They're probably going to, not have safe leads a ton. I don't think they're that good. I think they're just, not bad, and the conference is largely bad. So a healthy Jared Goff, I think, comfortably goes over that number again.
Yeah, I like that. I'll add one more, which is the same logic we used for Geno Smith last week to lead the NFL in passing yards. I think is equally true of a 3,800 prop. I mean, the dude threw for 4,200 yards last year, 4,300 yards last year. I think this is a team that has signaled that they're going to pass the ball more, right? Drafting a wide receiver in the first round. I just think the number is far too off. This is a team that should be passing more than they were last year, not less.
Yeah, it's a good one. There are a couple that are interesting. One that I really like, and then one that I want to talk to you guys about for placing. The one that I really like is Dak Prescott. His total 39.25.5. So let's just take a look at what Dak Prescott has done in the last full season that he played. He had 44.49. He obviously did not play a full complement of games last season. In 2019, the year he played a full season before the 2021 season, he had 4,900 yards. So I think that the thought here is obviously that Mike McCarthy is going to run the crap out of the ball. But I think that shaving off, say, 500 or more yards from Dak Prescott's passing yardage totals is, as we've talked about on this, I'm not sure the result of what Mike McCarthy is actually going to do. Because here's a couple of ways that it could play out. One is that it's all smoke, as we've talked about, and that they really haven't invested in a workhorse running back. They have Tony Pollard who's coming off an injury, and you're not giving him 30 carries a game. So what they have actually invested in is Brandon Cooks, and he's a receiver, and you're not going to line him up in the backfield. So that really leads to actually more passing for Dak Prescott. But here's the other way, guys, which is let's say that we're wrong. And like Mike McCarthy comes out there and he's like, let's run Tony Pollard into the ground. Well, he's going to run Tony Pollard into the ground. And then they're going to be losing. And then Dak Prescott's going to have to throw the ball. So this is, it sort of comes down to do you think Dak Prescott is going to be an efficient quarterback with great receivers? And it's the answer is yes. So I really like the over 39.25.5 there for Dak Prescott. The other one that I thought was really interesting is Lamar Jackson. So his prop out here at FanDuel is 3,500.5. Now, this is the opposite adjustment by the book. So he's never played more than 15 games, but in those years where he's had 15 starts, he's thrown for 27, 57, and 31, 27, respectively. So this would be saying he's going to play basically an entire complement of games, which he has not done in his entire career. He's played 12 games each of the past 2 seasons. And that he is also going to improve his efficiency. Now, I think that could be a long-term result for Lamar Jackson, but I am inclined, I think it's easy to say, oh yeah, that the efficiency is going to increase right away. He's got better receivers. Like, let's pump the brakes on the better receivers. Like, OBJ has to be on the field. Other than that, the receivers still stink. It's a new offense. I'm interested to see how that works. I think under 35.5 is like a fairly sharp bet, but I don't want to place it before talking to you guys. What do you guys think?
I'm guessing some of the thought here is the transition to Todd Monken, which does kind of scare me a little bit. Just you're bringing in a offensive coordinator that wants to throw the ball a lot more. Like you said, I think that, like there's probably also an upward adjustment Odell Beckham Jr. that probably should not be there. So kind of scare me because probably they come out and kind of sling it early on. And then you're a little nervous there. So I'll jump in with my favorite under. I think Jordan Love at 3,400 yards is pretty darn bullish. In an offense where, Rodgers, last year he missed some games, but his MVP season in 2021 hit 4,100 passing yards. I guess, yes, 1 game less, but that is the so efficient you're the MVP level of passing yards. And on a team that Matt LaFleur wants to run the football, play defense, all they do is invest all their resources over and over and over again on defense. Maybe eventually it'll actually be good. And Joe Barry can actually coordinate a competent unit for a change. But back to the offensive side, your receivers for a quarterback who has never played is going to be sophomore Christian Watson, sophomore Romeo Doubs, and rookie Jaden Reed is your top 3 receivers with an offensive line that, has some good players that have dealt with injuries. And then I just like, I think they're going to play a very slow. We talked a little bit about Judah when you were talking about the most passing yards. Maybe it's a Rodgers thing. Maybe it's a LaFleur thing. They're one of the slowest pace of play teams in the entire NFL. I just think it's this very bullish number. He's right in line with a lot of yes, Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson are kind of for a different reason, but 3,400 is in line with a lot of good quarterbacks, with Jordan Love.
Judah, what do you think about the Lamar 3,500?
Yeah, I share many of Brad's concerns just about the nature of the passing game. Like, I think Greg Roman designs a bunch of quarterback runs that are now going to be passes. And I think, again, I don't really care so much about what people say, so much look at the moves they made. And they're clearly investing in wide receiver. This is a team that's they're going to throw the ball a lot more. I'm not betting either side, though, because I also don't trust that Lamar Jackson can stay healthy. And I still think it's a huge leap. We have no idea how efficient he'll be without the running game on his side. I honestly don't hate kind of using a different market as a way to kind of express a Todd Monken take, which is looking at this is something we were talking about pre-show, the most regular season quarterback total rushing yards, also available on FanDuel, which they're pricing in Lamar Jackson for his past production, maybe building in a little bit of a injury risk. I see this as a clear Justin Fields bet, expressing kind of the same conviction of, which is my answer to your question about Todd Monken. I think they're going to pass the ball more and they're going to run. That's the only thing I'm really confident in. And that leaves a huge mispricing for Justin Fields, whom I think the Bears will design as they did starting week 7 last year on offense, entirely around Justin Fields' rushing game. You kind of see teams that one is leaning directly into the quarterback running, the other, I think, away from it.
Yeah. By the way, that market, Justin Fields is 2-1, Lamar Jackson plus 250, Jalen Hurts plus 350, Anthony Richardson plus 450, Josh Allen is 10-1, Daniel Jones 14-1, Mahomes 40-1, Geno Smith is 60-1. I agree. That's a good place to, I think, place that bet. I am nervous about the efficiency of that offense. I think it's going to be a dramatic change. And while I have some faith in Todd Monken, I want to see it first, I guess. And I would say that they're trying to be competitive this year, right? It's not like a kind of, sort of wait and see thing. And I could see them coming out and throwing the ball a lot to begin with. it not working out particularly well, and them going, okay, well, we've got to have some Lamar Jackson runs. And I can see that happening before the regular season starts. Like I can see them coming out there, kind of install some of this stuff, and Harbaugh going, man, that just doesn't look quite how I want it to look. Let's make sure that we're a little more balanced to start. Let's wean him onto this. Let's wean this team onto this as opposed to kind of going all out. Because it is an interesting thing to just kind of say, hey, we're going to take Lamar Jackson. If you put kind of the special talents within the NFL up there and kind of say which ones are the most unique, I would say like Lamar Jackson's rushing ability is up there. And so the idea that they're just going to kind of take it away, I think is just ridiculous, because so much of that opens up his efficiency as a passer, right? So they need to keep that threat. And if they get rid of it, and he is just a pure drop back passer, it's kind of neutering what I think is one of the more unique aspects of a football player.
It's a
For
very
him
interesting.
and Fields. Oh, go ahead, Judah.
You go.
I was going to say for him and Fields, what I think, and Fields, the argument is more DJ Moore, not like the coaching or anything, but does an increase in passing and focusing on passing and dropping back, could they just scramble more and pick up chunk yardage on a lot more scrambles? And does that kind of counterbalance the lack of purely designed runs? With Fields, I think we are going to see that. I think I agree with you. They're still going to design a lot around him, but he's missing games late in the year. He's getting his hamstrings worked on the sideline like half the games. Like, I think it's going to be more taking off on scrambles with the defense respecting their passing game, at least ideally in their minds.
Judah, what do you think about the kind of the Lamar Jackson Ravens side of it? Because I see your point, but again, I do think that there's, like, if you're just going into the pass, leaning into the pass, you are kind of taking away that special ability that Lamar has, right?
Yeah. No, I also love your framing of it, because I almost see it as like a two-part parlay. Which is like, first, right, start from the expectation, which is like what his career averages are, which is probably like around 3,200. And now you have to project two things. Number one, like there's going to be an increase in volume, right? That they actually are going to pass the ball more, which, as you're alluding to, like there are a bunch of kind of issues with that. And then second, like you have no idea how efficient he's going to be. And if you're starting from kind of like two things that need to be true simultaneously in order for the bet to hit, it leads me to the under, because I think all the reasons you're outlining, that like there are a lot of question marks surrounding the efficiency, and like a totally changed offense is something we've never seen before. And if you're going to price in projection of probably like 300 yards, 400 yards more than what we would have seen last year, I'm going to take the under there.
Yeah, the health thing is also interesting, right? Because the idea is that you're going to keep him healthy by not running him as much. But Brad, to your point, does he find a way to run no matter what? And I think that the answer is got to be yes. You just got to get that guy on the move. But I like Fields at 2-1 on that in that market quite a bit. Before we move on to the new Hopkins stuff, quick reminder that you can get a PFF Plus subscription for 25% off. Promo code Forecast, FRECAST. You can get access to all of the unlocked fantasy and betting tools plus content at pff.com. Everything. The PFF Plus subscription can be yours. And if you get an annual subscription, you can get it all the way through into next season. So that will take you through fantasy draft, betting, and the NFL draft and free agency next year. So it is a great deal. Go get it before your fantasy season starts, because you will want all of that great insight from Nathan Yaki to help you prepare, plus some new fantasy tools that are coming your way as a PFF subscriber that you will not want to miss out on. So go make that happen. Also, join the PFF Printing Press Discord. I think we have made Judah at golf better, and we've made a lot of people WNBA bettors, because Ben Brown, who was on this podcast on Wednesday, it was a great podcast. If you did not listen to it, the man was absolutely on fire and has continued to be. And the WNBA is actually a really good sport. It's a great product. And it's one that you can bet on. So join the Printing Press Discord. The link is in the description, also in the tweet that we send out. And if you can't find it there, you can hit us up on Twitter and we'll throw it your way. We are just a few shy of 1,000 members of the Printing Press Discord. So join the 976 fellow listeners and avid bettors and get involved. It's a great way to make sure that you're betting efficiently during the summer months and prepare for the NFL season. All right, Nuke Hopkins, DeAndre Hopkins, released by the Cardinals kind of at long last. Brad, is there anything noteworthy about the release at all? And if not, I guess, what are you hearing in terms of who is actually interested in him, not just what kind of NFL Twitter has decided should be interested in him?
Yeah, for sure. I do think it can be underrated sometimes that a team does not want to part with draft capital and pay pre-existing contracts. So there probably were teams that, even if it sounds silly to say, oh, it's a 5th-round pick and you have to bring in Nuke Hopkins on his old deal, versus now he might get signed for a deal that's still going to look pretty strong once it gets done. You might scoff at that and say, oh, there's no team that wasn't in before that is now in. Yes, there are. There are probably teams that were saying, if he's cut, we're going to check him out. Otherwise, we're all good. So the reporting we have so far is Albert Breer put out the only teams that asked for permission to speak with DeAndre Hopkins when it was still more looking to a trade as opposed to anything else were the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. So kind of the two teams you're probably alluding to that the Twitterverse has decided are the teams that are going to go after him. I'm sure others will enter the fold. I still think the Giants could be interested, and a couple others if Hopkins is interested in going there. But those two we know actually expressed interest by reaching out to talk with him. And my guess is they said, will you take less money? Will you convert money into incentives? Will you move things around for us? Will you, yada, 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 yada. And based on what he said to those questions, he is now cut and on the open market. So, I think it's going to be a handful of teams that get involved here. I would not be surprised if a couple dark horses jump in the mix. I believe he wants to contend, but I'm sure he wants to make some nice money and could go to if you look at him, he's been on the Houston Texans and Arizona Cardinals. Like, even going to like a 500 football team for him would be a refreshing change of scenery.
Yeah, it definitely would be. I mean, we talked about the Chiefs a bunch. I just don't think that makes a ton of sense. I think the Bills makes a lot more sense to me, and I feel like should be the odds-on favorite. The Jets, I think, are also interesting. You mentioned the Giants as well. I've heard some people talk about the Dolphins. I don't think that makes a lot of sense based on the kind of receiver that you see them going after. They obviously also have kind of 3 starting receivers right now as well. So I don't know. It's interesting. I do think that he's still got something left in the tank, but I'm curious your take on that, Judah. Like, does he make a difference for a contender, or is it actually, is it something where you're going to be wasting resources on Hopkins?
Yeah, this is actually a little preview into something I'm looking into, just like the differences in man versus zone for certain types of receivers. And the way I'm kind of thinking about it now is similar to like a starting pitcher in baseball, where when you start, the guy's got 100 miles per hour on his fastball. He's got a nasty curveball. He's dominating on his stuff alone. I think that's kind of similar to man coverage. It's just a guy who, like, on pure talent alone can win. And zone is kind of like a pitcher who reinvents himself. He learns the technique of pitching in the same way that you learn kind of the technique of zone and timing with a quarterback, and kind of learning it more as an art rather than just kind of winning on talent alone. And DeAndre Hopkins has not been a guy who's winning in man over the last bunch of years. He's kind of been a good zone receiver and not much else. And in some of the preliminary research I've done, actually zone receivers age way better than man, in some ways hinting to the prior I had, which is to say, like, I think DeAndre Hopkins has been good and will continue to be good because his skill set isn't really so age dependent. It's a more of a technique rather than just like winning on his pure talent, in the sense of like his speed and his acceleration, his agility and such and stuff of that sort. And he's been a great receiver. Like, there's no way around that. You can look at any of the efficiency metrics. He'll still be good. And I think that will remain true no matter which team he lands with.
That was a phenomenal analogy. Yeah. Go ahead, George.
I thought it was good.
Yeah, I was going to say that is super interesting. And, you go back to 2020, which was the last time that he really performed well. And the drop off from 2020 to 2022, I think I'm doing this correctly in terms of PFF grade versus zone, is 30 grade points from 90.2 to 60.5. Which is, I think here, and I'll get this as we're talking about it, something that, as you're speaking to, Judah, right, is kind of a function of probably a couple of things. It's dramatically worse than his drop off in terms of versus zone. So his drop off versus zone, just an 83 PFF grade versus zone in 2020, 74.5. So a drop off, but not nearly as big of a one. when you look at the man coverage. I will also say this about him. I mean, the availability thing is one thing, but the other is just the type of offense that he's playing in, where he was sequestered to the outside. And I think a guy like Hopkins, to your point, Judah, who's savvy enough to beat zone, can be very well utilized across the field and in different positions. And so that would be an area that, I would be looking to kind of leverage him. I guess, Brad, like, that's nice to say, and I think can agree that he has some value, but what's it going to cost for a guy that's a zone beater at this point?
And so that's my thing. And I love the analogy because I do think it also ties into, it makes sense to me that the peaks are higher for these man beaters. Like I think their value is probably viewed in a higher regard. Like you're going to trade more for an AJ Brown, you're going to trade more for a Kerry Wood to go Cubs with it than you are than a Kyle Hendricks. Yeah. But Kyle Hendricks also is probably going to be a good pitcher for 5 years longer than Kerry Wood is. So anyways, I'll bring this back to the football. This is not a baseball podcast, except for when Judah drops some Mariners gems. But anyway, so I think it does. Like it's a relevant and interesting data point because I do think teams don't view him the way they did before. He's not quite that elite guy anymore. He still has value, no question about it. And I come back to the Baltimore Ravens contract for Odell Beckham Jr. has to be a massive wrench in this entire thing, because if Odell Beckham Jr. is getting 1 year, $15 million fully guaranteed with incentives, there's no reason Hopkins should take much less than that, if at all less than that. So that I think is very complicated, very difficult. And I'm sure there are some teams that are annoyed by that because, like you said, yeah, he's missed a little bit of time here and there, suspension, some small injuries. He didn't miss a whole season, coming off a second torn ACL. And yeah, he's probably a year older than Odell Beckham Jr., if I had to guess. And yes, I think Odell is probably a better separator against all types of coverage, right now. But yeah, so I struggle to see him taking much less than that, but it is very, very late in the game. I think whatever he does take, if it is a 1 year, which is my guess, it'll be pretty incentive laden. He'll try to hit, I think, 10 million and maybe juice that up pretty significantly with incentives. But yeah, that Odell contract is not helping the teams trying to get in the mix here.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, so there's no way he's taking less than Odell, right? Like, no chance.
That's my thing. It's hard to imagine, like I said, or you take a little less in base value, but let's say your incentives push you to 25 instead of pushing you to, up to 18 from 15.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Final, let's make a pick here. Who do we think Duke Hopkins plays for in 2023? Judah?
Got the Bills.
Me too. Yeah, I'm going Bills as well.
That was my thought. I'll give a dark horse here. I do think that that a dark horse is not the Chiefs. I don't think it's the Chiefs. I'll say the Jets. I don't know why. I'm just throwing them out there. But I think it's the Bills.
No, real quick on that. Before you move on, I don't mind that at all, because I think the thinking there would be they have Corey Davis on the roster. He's owed $10.5 million in salary. They could get out of that with 6 figures of dead cap. I actually think it's not a bad guess at all. If Rodgers says, what are we doing here? If we're going to do this, let's do it. All due respect to Corey Davis. Cut him, go sign DeAndre Hopkins. It could probably be cap neutral. And, of course, cash matters more, but wouldn't be dramatically different. The Jets is not a bad guess.
Well, the reason that, I think it makes sense from that perspective, but I was also thinking of it as who would be incentivized to keep him from the Bills. So, I think the Chiefs could be incentivized, certainly, but anyone in their own division is going to be more incentivized. So if they can say, hey, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, the last thing we want to do is be like, nah, we don't want Duke Hopkins. Then he goes to the Bills and then he makes a crucial catch against us and, kicks us out of the division or whatever it is. That would be horrible. So I think it makes sense from that perspective, more so for the Jets than it does for the Chiefs. All right, let's get to the NBA Finals. Game 7 is tonight. Tips off in about 25 minutes after we are speaking here. I have been ice cold with the NBA since the Jimmy Butler timeout sign, I think, has ruined me as well. I also think the Gabe Vincent thing for the Heat was a real issue. Obviously, if Jimmy and Bam play even moderately well, they probably win that game in Game 6. But here we are in Game 7. I believe it is now a 7.5 point spread. for the Boston Celtics. I believe it opened 8.5. So it's come down a little bit. Obviously, they've won 3 in a row. So that combined with the fact that they are the better team, ESPN Analytics had them 97% to win the series. Those people, I must be just overjoyed with what they might be seeing here in a few minutes. But kind of real quick, I guess, Brad, where's your head at? What are you betting for this game? And then any like kind of finals thoughts based on what you're thinking about for this game?
Yeah, so it is interesting. First of all, you mentioned the Gabe Vincent. Malcolm Brogdon, did not play last game, may have not played in game 5 either. I'm not sure if he's even going tonight. That's a 6th man of the year on a obviously good roster, but nevertheless, I think pregame I am going to take some heat. I took it at 8, but I would not be surprised if that turns out to be either a bad bet or something that I can't escape. Like I'm almost waiting for maybe they go on a run early and then I try to live bet Celtics and maybe middle a little bit or do something with the under and do something correlated there. But yeah, I think the Boston's going to win and I wouldn't be surprised if they cover. I just wanted to, my early exposure was heat. And then I'm planning on seeing if I can get a good live angle back on the Celtics.
A little Scott Foster and Tony Brothers helping you out there. I don't know if
Exactly.
I can. Scott Foster and Tony Brothers basically are heat killers. I think that Heat are 2-13 against Scott Foster ATS or something like that, or the Celtics are 13-2. It's something like that. I'll look up the stat here in a second. Judah, I do have a question for you on this though. Do you pay attention to the officiating stuff? I've been thinking about it a lot from a football perspective, especially with regard to like props and how we might take advantage of that. But because I think it's harder from like a overall game outcome to do so. But curious if you believe that is just complete noise and baloney, or if there's something to be assessed there.
I think I'm somewhere in between, in that like all the reasons you'd think it's complete baloney, that it's a small sample size, are true. But if you like think about it conceptually, like these are human beings refereeing games. There could absolutely be biases, especially with the way the NBA's played. Which is like, if you can't get in the Heat, this was their game plan in the second half, which is like, if you can't generate offense, let's just like run into a guy and try and draw a foul. It's like almost prone to allow for a referee to basically decide the game, because that was their offense. They weren't trying to, generate ball movement to create open shots. In that sense, like, yeah, I think it does matter, because like these tendencies over, it's not 2 games or 3 games, but 15 games, like you probably want to pay a little bit of attention to it.
Here it is. So Heat games officiated by Scott Foster last 2 seasons, 3-12 against the spread, 2-13 straight up. Celtics are 11-3 ATS in the playoffs. Scott Foster is the lead official since 2020. This is per Evan Abrams. I believe he's with Bet Labs. It's tough. It's why we talk about like trends being such a dangerous thing and generally a thing that you want to avoid like the plague, because it's very easy to fall into the trap of, oh yeah, like how could this not be something that's for sure going to continue? But like there's so many different ways to kind of data mine these sorts of things. Robbie Greer wrote a great piece that I tweeted out a few weeks ago about this. And often you can find these things if you look hard enough, but underlying it is generally a lot of baloney. So, you look at the Heat, for example, like they were terrible against the spread this entire season. So, maybe you split that out and like that, like they were just bad against the spread this season. It has nothing to do with Scott Foster, right? They just didn't do well. And the Celtics are a good team. So like them winning against the spread is not like a totally ridiculous thing, and is not necessarily statistically significant. So I think it is interesting, but all the points you made, Judah, are tough because it is like a human being. And I also think there's just ways that teams play, ways that coaches get on refs, players get on refs, that is like hard to ignore, man. I really do think it's tough, especially in the NBA where everyone whines after every single call. I mean, it is like brutal, and these guys are like in your face. So I know that they're professional, but I would say it's almost like a subconscious thing where you're like, I'm so tired of this team. I'm, the whistle ends up getting blown.
I think the only way to actually factor refs into a sport, into a bet, I do this for the NFL. The ATS stuff I ignore. I think it's noise. And I tested it years ago when I was in college. I looked at it more so stylistically. Are they a guy who calls a lot of, pass interference? So are we going to get some big chunk gains or NBA? This guy calls a lot of charges I think that's the only way you can do it personally.
Yeah, if you get I think of that as well, right? So you get certain types of proclivity with a referee to call certain types of calls over expectation. That's the other thing. You have to adjust for expectation and then look at a team that also draws those over expectation, right? I think that's an interesting way to look at it, right? There's think about Joe Flacco, right? It's he's going to throw,
for real. Calls.
No PI. I will point out that Arjun helped me bet the Nuggets 10-1. I want to say 3 months ago to win the NBA Finals. So I feel really good about that. I'm not placing any additional bets on the finals because of that. But I think there's some interesting ways to consider it. I think it's going to be very, very tough for either of these teams to beat arrested Jokic. But curious, Brad, if there's anything that you're looking at from a finals perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that scares me to come back to is just that the Celtics, I think, were second in defensive efficiency this year, and the Nuggets were outside the top 10. And going back however long that a team, has not won the finals when they're not a good defensive team. And I do think, Time Lord, Robert Williams, and Al Horford, and what Celtics could do to rotate some bodies on Jokic could maybe work. I'm not sure Robert Williams would be the best, but I think Horford probably is a pretty strong matchup in terms of just an athlete. Even though he's 40 years old, he just play a ton of minutes still right now. That said, I mean, I think the Nuggets should be the favorite, and I'm not saying I'm betting the Celtics, but that does kind of scare me when you break it down a little bit. And just in terms of, again, I guess it's trends, but defense matters a ton in these late NBA. I know it seems like it doesn't, but it really, really does when it's crunch time in these NBA playoffs.
That's a good point. Jude, anything from your standpoint on the finals? I know that not where you like to play, but I'm curious. I got to ask.
I was gonna say I've only placed one bet this entire NBA. I had a Lakers bet from April. The only bet I've placed during the NBA Finals was the Celtics plus 220 right before they hit the buzzer beater. So I got lucky there, and I think I'm just gonna play off here.
Wait, you actually placed that?
I can pull it up on my phone.
That's incredible. What was going through your mind there?
What went through my mind there? It's one possession. I felt like they'd get Tatum a good shot. Goes to show. Off the timeout, they got to be drawing up something, and probably had a better than 50 or even 40% chance of going in. Which is to say, there was no great thought process.
Marcus Smart pulls the trigger, and you're like, "Oh no!"
I was,
yeah, right,
yeah.
I mean, the fact that White knew to kind of run towards the basket there. He also did a great job spacing out for they could have thrown him the ball for a wide open 3 too. So a great play by him.
Yeah. I'm curious about this because I'm not a trained basketball eye, but to me, it was I saw a defender, I don't know who it was, not following the trailing forward and instead watching the basket and should have been an easy box out. Am I off there?
So it's funny because that's what I think everyone's takeaway. But Spoelstra himself said, I think the defender actually went to the corner, George. I think he went where he thought White was going to run. Which Spoelstra, maybe he just stands to be a good coach and protect him, but he did say he was doing his job and was doing what he was supposed to do. But it's a fair question, Judah.
No, I tweeted this out because I thought it was so funny. Every single youth basketball coach is going to come into their practice on Tuesday or Wednesday and be see, kids, here's why you got to box out.
100%.
What they did with Max Strus, former Chicago Bull, was they had him face guard Tatum and keep him from getting the ball. So he was the inbound defender on Derek White. Derek White was the inbounder. And so when Tatum didn't get the ball, he had to get back to White. And so he was trailing White the whole way. And then White went to the basket. I actually thought Strus did an incredible job, almost blocked the putback. he was like, I mean, if he had, a couple of more inches on his vertical, he might have actually blocked it. So I think the issue is more to do with, do you like what Spoelstra decided to do with that defender? Because it does open up now that inbounder, and with 3 seconds left, the inbounder is way more dangerous than with 2, right? Just because there's more that you can do. The inbounder can be open for a shot. Obviously, the putback was, a secondary option. So I think it was more to do with the overall defensive strategy. And I think Spoelstra has been amazing. We'll see what he comes up with in game 7. So I'm not going to, knock on him. I think it's basically the one place that the shot could miss, right? Like literally the one place the shot could miss. And, and you get unlucky there. But yeah, I don't think there was anyone else. I might have to watch the replay again that could have theoretically boxed out White other than Strus. And Strus was just in a bad position because he had kept Tatum from getting the ball. And if that shot misses in any other direction and the Heat win, we're lauding Spoelstra because he made Marcus Smart take a 3 instead of Jason Tatum because of that defensive scheme. So, that's the tricky thing. So yeah, welcome to the PFF Forecast, a basketball podcast. We've only got a few weeks of this left, so enjoy it. That is our show. We'll be back on Wednesday at our normal time. Thank you so much for hanging out. We love you. Peace.